Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Cassy. I run Factory 42, which is an immersive content company based out of London, working across VR, AR, and also good old-fashioned TV. Joining me today, I'm really pleased to say, is Rikard Steiber.
Great to be here.
President of Viveport, and also SVP of Virtual Reality at HTC Vive. Viveport is effectively an iTunes for VR, and it's a large, quickly growing platform. Rikard is going to tell us all about it in a moment, but to give you some context, Rikard is a bit of an IBC veteran. He's worked across all sorts of different forms of tech, across TV, across streaming over the years. In fact, originally from Sweden, his first job in media was back in 1988, working on the booking system. For
I was 5 years old.
Yes, well, I thought it was 4, but anyway, working on the groundbreaking movie box system, which at the time involved you going not only to rent the VHS, but also the VHS player to take it home for the weekend. So times have changed a little bit since then. He then worked in the internet space in the 90s, setting up Scandinavia Online. He spent several years at Google as head of marketing for all of their products in EMEA, so that included YouTube, Android, Chrome. Also been chief digital officer at Modern Times Group, so took him into esports and multi-channel networks. He's been a long-time lover of VR since the 90s in the first sort of Matrix films. And he joined HTC nearly 2 years ago. So he brings a really, really interesting perspective. And also, I guess, as a future gazer, it's only natural that he has already prepaid for a ticket for the Virgin Galactic flights into space. I'm very pleased that it's a return ticket he's gone for. And, but before we go into the stratosphere, perhaps you can tell us a bit about what you're up to.
I will absolutely. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I also think we should give IBC an applause for putting together this great event on a Saturday. So let's give them a quick hand. So when I grew up, I wanted to be a superhero. I wanted to change the world. And at home, I have 2 young daughters, Alexandra and Athena, and I can see that they also want to be superheroes. And then already today, you know, they're traveling to Mars and wandering around the world, and they are, you know, going underwater and, you know, interacting with sea animals. So I believe that virtual reality is going to change the world, not just for us as consumers, but us as an industry. So for the first time ever, we're going to democratize experiences. So Alexandra and Athena, they already been to Mars before Elon Musk, and they are swimming in the oceans like Jacques Cousteau. So anything is possible in VR. And actually, you can say that our, let's see if we have some slides here.
From walking
here we go. Maybe. No, it's not there. Anyway, let's do this. So actually, what's interesting with virtual reality is that we're kind of reducing the distance between the real world and the imaginary world. And VR becomes this portal that takes us through that. And the technology that makes this possible is using both our visionary senses, our auditory, but also our body. We can move around. And what happens then is that our brain gets so much sensory input that the brain thinks that the virtual world is actually the real world and not the real world. So it's kind of hard to explain. So I wanted to show you a video that to get everyone on the same level what VR is. So a year ago when we launched the Vive, we made a little video to show what are some of the experiences that we'll be bringing to market. So let's have a quick look to get everyone on the same page.
From walking to the couch, walking to the walls.
Oh, this is so cool! I can move all this stuff!
Look at this thing!
Oh! Yes! So you gotta keep with the beat. Oh, that was good!
So this is typically what happens in our living room in my house. We have dinner with some friends, and my wife would tell me, Rikard, let's not do the VR thing tonight. And then after a couple of glasses of wine, my friend will say, Rikard, is it true that you can wield a lightsaber in VR? And we will like slowly move out into the living room. But it's an awesome experience. And with VR also comes AR. It doesn't seem like the slides are working here. Let me just restart this and see if we can. Let's see. So for some reason, none of the slides are working. Let me just see if we can do this again. I love doing tech support live. This is great. Can we have the slides on screen, perhaps?
Hooray.
Voila. Here we go. Thank you. So the other thing that everyone's talking about is augmented reality. So what is augmented reality? So if VR is turning your imagination into reality, augmented reality is kind of turning your reality into imagination. So it's kind of looking at the real world, but then adding digital objects. And I would say it's still very early on. Most of us try some augmented reality things on our phone, but there are very, very few augmented reality experiences where you actually think that you're in a different reality. So we have HoloLens, we have Metia, we have a couple of experiences. And actually, this Christmas, the first sort of AR toy is coming, where you actually can wield the lightsabers. Let's have a quick look what's coming for this Christmas. So it's still very early on, and as you can see, you don't really believe that that's real. So augmented reality is very much in its early stage. And as a Swedish person, we go to IKEA all the time. And you want to buy the right kind of furniture, where, of course, augmented reality is great. So IKEA launched this app called Place, where you basically can take the catalog and try to put in different kind of furniture. So you kind of scan the room, and then once it's mapped the room, you can place a 3D object at scale in your room. So I think for the next couple of years, and also with the great introductions of what Apple and Google and Facebook recently announced, there will be all kinds of things that you can basically add additional information or objects through your phone or your tablet, but it's not really augmenting your entire reality. It's not that you believe that these objects are there, which is a big difference versus virtual reality. So if you look at where we are, I would say that virtual reality and augmented reality is going to be an entirely new computing platform. So which means that there will be entirely new pieces of software and experiences being developed on this platform. Another way to look at it, which I kind of like, is it's a new way for us to interact with computers. So if you think about the early stage when we had the PC, we interacted with the computer with a keyboard. Later on, we got the mouse. Later on, we got touch controls, and today probably we are talking to Siri or to Google or some of the others, so voice is becoming more and more important. But actually, with VR and AR, you're actually using your body. You're kind of stepping into the computer and having interaction in a much more natural way than ever before. But we're still in the very early stages of VR and AR, so of course you have the early adopters and the geeks who would then, embrace this, and a lot of the experiences are either gaming or the industrial B2B applications. So to just frame it a little bit, I would say that we're kind of watching this as 3 main tiers for virtual reality. So you have the high-end experiences like the Vive, which is PC-powered. You need a PC to power your computing device. And on the low end, you have cardboard solutions where you're basically using your phone to power it. Later on this year, we're launching standalone device, which means you don't need a phone or you don't need a PC. You just put on the device, which is going to be much more convenient for many use cases. So think of it as high-end VR. Your mind and your brain thinks you're there. And then on the low end, you're probably watching a 360 video, but it's not really VR. It's watching a new video format. So the search is really around true presence. And what true presence means is that your brain is convinced that you are in the virtual world, that the virtual world is the real world. And in order to give more sensory inputs, there are a couple of innovations coming. There's like a new ecosystem coming with things like trackers. You can see on the gun, and by putting the tracker on, that object actually moves from the real world into the imaginary world, so you can see it in VR. It could be your tennis racket. It could be pretty much anything that you can move from the real world into the VR world. But also, you're wireless. So before, you had a cord to your PC, but we launched with a couple of different players wireless solutions so you don't have to be connected anymore. And finally, which I'm very excited about, is haptics, which means that you would have things that give you physical feedback when you are in VR. So if you get shot by an arrow, you will feel it. And the next generation are having much more sophisticated suits. This is the Tesla suit. And what it uses electricity. So if you remember in the days back when you want to have a six-pack, and you had this electrical thing that trained your muscles, that is available now. And what's interesting with these suits is that what they do is that it can capture your movements so that when you have an avatar in the virtual world, it becomes very, very realistic how it moves and operates. It wouldn't be just a head and two hands. It will be your entire body. The other thing, it uses electricity, so what it can do is just also simulate heat and cold in addition to actually giving you physical feedback. And that will truly increase the experience of being there and having presence. The other thing that makes things much more realistic is how we interact with computers. So already today, there are applications for brain-computer interface. So it's using the technology EEG that's been around measuring brain waves for some time, but with AI and machine learning, it can essentially interpret those data to what it is that you want. So there are applications where you could, simple applications, you can choose between a number of objects, you think about the cat, and the cats get selected. So it is kind of telepathy, and it's already up and running. A little bit closer to that, I do think that eye tracking is going to be a real breakthrough. So there are several technology solutions where you, in the headset, put eye tracking accessories. And eye tracking is going to be a game changer. And the reason is that when we interact with computers, today you're probably pointing and clicking at something, but very, very soon, within the next year, you'll be able to just look at something to select it or interact with it. Also, as social is going to be so important in VR, having eye contact with you, and if we have eye contact, we get a social connection that you wouldn't get if I was an avatar and you're having an interaction with Stevie Wonder, which is great, but you wouldn't have that sort of physical connection. And finally, as we move into VR, today most of the experiences are downloaded and played. Very soon, we will be streaming experiences like we do on Netflix or any other music service. So then, of course, since there will be bandwidth capacity constraints, by streaming things that you're looking at rather than things behind you, it's going to be a much more effective way. And actually, we have some news. So yesterday, and I guess we're announcing it today, we launched the first VR cloud streaming solution. So what it does is, we launched this in the province in China with a cable TV provider. So instead of connecting your PC, your VR to the PC, you connect it to your set-top box. And then all the applications are on a server up in the cloud. So you're kind of streaming the VR experience rather than running it on your PC. So the commercial trial is you pay, I think it's 77 euros per month. You get the headset. You get 60 megabits per second bandwidth. And so we'll see how that goes. But it's early stages. But I do think that in the not-too-distant future, you'll be streaming these high-end VR experiences very soon. OK, so enough about technology. VR is actually about content and experiences. So I run Viveport, which is the global app store. We're live in 32 countries, where you have all the content that you want. And we want to be positioned as somewhere where you go as a consumer to find the great experiences, but also where you start your journey into VR. Connect with your friends before you move into through the portal. So we have experiences just for consumers, for enterprises, but also for arcade operators. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But our main audience is actually the developer. And without the developer, without content, there will be no industry. So we're kind of relying on the media industry, as well as the developers, to create great experiences. We're doing very good so far. We have over 20,000 developers registered. And in a recent survey by Virtual Reality Developers Conference, you can see that Vive is the main platform today. But also, when asked about which platform are you developing for next exclusively, the distance between the competitors is even higher. So our objective is help creators and developers monetize their content, because of course, in the early days of an ecosystem, it's hard for a developer to build their business and monetize. So we do things like pay to download, in-app purchases, advertising, etc. But we recently launched the world's first app subscription service. Think of it as an early version of Netflix for VR, where you can select 5 apps, you can then pay $7 per month, and then on a monthly cadence, you can switch them around. So this is a great way for developers to make a little bit more money and also discover much more content for consumers. So today, we're roughly just over 2,000 titles on the Vive platform. But as that grows, it will be hard for consumers to find the right kind of content. You can think about when you're trying to pick a movie on Netflix or HBO or one of your services, there's 5,000 channels, but, or 500 channels, but there may not be anything on. The other thing interesting with VR, in the early days, not everyone has access to VR. So what we're starting to see is like similar to when the rise of the internet cafes, people didn't have access to broadband or high-end PCs. In public spaces like the cinema halls or shopping malls, libraries, or even dedicated VR arcades, we're seeing the rise of these experiences. And so we actually have, I think probably the biggest, we have 700 titles available for arcade operators, because most of the software today is for consumer use only. So it's hard for an arcade operator to start if you can't have continuous access to high-end content. So looking a little bit about what is popular today. So those 2,000 applications, I would say that most of them are games. Gaming is by far the biggest. We have a great partner called Steam, who is probably the best gaming platform on the planet. So we are in the early stages where most things are games. The other thing which is really taking off is learning and education. This medium has the potential for you to learn more quickly and recall much better than anything else, since you're using multi-sensory input. And then, of course, creativity. I'm going to show you some examples, and then social experiences. The new thing that's happening this fall for this Christmas is that we're getting the first AAA titles. So Fallout, you have Doom, you have LA Noire, you have things that the developers spent like a year to develop. So of course, we didn't have those from the beginning, so they are coming out into the market now. And that will significantly drive consumer adoption. So if you take our partner Steam, I think they have 100 million monthly active gamers. So of course, we're looking to make sure that that community has a great experience on VR as well. I have 2 young daughters, so I'm most passionate about education and learning. And there's no better way to learn and discover the world than in VR. So I wanted to show you a quick clip. Some of you have seen Google Earth VR just made a recent announcement. I just want everyone for you to have a quick look what you can do, but also what your kids can do in VR. So let's have a look at Google Earth VR. So you can travel the world anywhere. So can you guess what is the thing that most people in Google VR looks at? Anyone? Quick shout out. What do you think? Paris, IBC, Amsterdam? No. Grand Canyon. Actually, one of the things that people are most curious is where they grew up when they were kids and their home address, which is quite interesting, actually. Google also created an application called Tiltbrush where you paint in 3D, which is probably one of the most used applications of all. But creativity is not just in VR. Actually, we're starting to see some really interesting AR creativity applications as well. And I think now with the development kits that's been out there since this year, we're starting to see users create some really interesting things. So when I grew up, there was a Norwegian band called Aha, and they created a song called Take On Me. And I just want to show you a little bit clip that someone did in AR, how you basically are in the real world. So in this case, you're looking for your phone, but you see this portal into the song, and you move in there. So let's have a quick look what you can do with AR. So it's changing your house background into this cartoonish style, but you kind of walk through the portal, and then you can sort of see your normal living room when you look out. And of course, your kids. So I'm sure that no one had an idea that this would be one of the things. The other thing which is really cool is that the world is going social. And our friends at Facebook, of course, who are the leaders in social, created this place where you in VR can hang out with your friends as an avatar. You could message in from the real world to talk to your friends. You can look at photos in 360, which is great. And I think that actually creativity and social is going to be a magical mix. This is going to be a killer app. So just the last month, we launched something called Mindshow on the platform. And Mindshow is a creativity app where you can create stories. You can create TV shows, but it's like cartoonish. I want to show you what you can do very, very easily. So let's have a quick look.
Welcome to Mindshow, an app that lets you create, share, and experience shows in VR. Choose a set. Place your props. Pick your characters. Bring them to life. Record your performance.
Crash landed on an alien planet.
Play it back. And share your show. It's a whole new way to tell stories. And this is just the beginning.
And I can tell you, when you walk out on that airplane wing and you look down, you're definitely not going to jump. Let's see if he jumps. Nope, not today. All right. The interesting why this is so interesting for the for consumers, of course, we've seen the rise of YouTube and sharing content and the whole sort of content generation now. This is going to move into VR. But also for us as an industry producing a TV show, having these mixed reality experiences is so easy. Earlier this year, Apple announced that they're going to be compatible with the Vive, and they used Lucasfilm and ILM. They're producing a new movie around, a virtual reality movie around Darth Vader. And one of the things that they showcased is that they're shooting the entire movie in VR. So in VR, here's some quick snapshots from how you actually are in this VR world, where you can basically put in TIE fighters, you could put in the actors like Darth Vader, and then you can play the scene. So you're kind of in real time creating this. This is for professional use today, but of course, very, very soon, ourselves and our kids will be able to create real movies. So if you want to wield the lightsaber also, you can do that today in VR. And I think what's important for the industry is to really look at how can we take all the IP, all the brands that consumers really love, and see how can we extend them into augmented reality or virtual reality. Because when we're shooting things, when we're creating things, it is much easier to create these extensions. And it's a great way for consumers and advertisers to deepen the relationship. And one of the things which is unique with VR is the ability to transmit feelings. So if you want to feel excitement or fear or lust or whatever the thing is, this medium is very, very strong. So looking at the TV industry, I just want to take you through what is happening a little bit. We are starting to see most of the drama genre looking at how can we use this medium to create more immersive experiences. This is an example of Stranger Things are now coming out. They started with a simple 360 video, and now they're doing much more interactive experiences for you to engage with the property that they have a big fan base. Today in New York, there is a big esports event. So today, esporters are able to basically teleport themselves to VIP seats or sit next to their favorite gamer, or even teleport themselves into the game and see what is happening. This is, of course, something which is super important for sports, where the willingness to pay and hang out with your team and your favorite players is so big. So there are all kinds of things where you're starting to not just have VIP seats, but you're actually getting much closer to your favorite athletes in a completely new ways, from basketball to the Olympics. And I do think that documentary and David Attenborough, if you want to really have a curated experience, is go underwater and discover the ocean with him, but not just look at what the TV can show you, but you can look at everything. It's a completely different experience and something that consumers will for sure adopt. So what's happening now is that we in the early days we had this sort of 360 video world, and then you have the gaming world. And as we move forward into this year, these two worlds are coming together. So you have cinematic, photorealistic experiences, but they're interactive. They're not necessarily linear, which means that it's going to be a completely new experience. So we need new storytellers. We need new technology for us to be able to create these experiences. But these are going to be something that no one has ever discovered before, and it's going to change the way we experience things. So one of the things we are doing, and one of the things that I think will radically change the awareness of VR in the world, is cinema. And Steven Spielberg and Warner Brothers are releasing Ready Player One in end of March next year. So Ready Player One is about the future where everyone lives in virtual reality. We work in VR, we go on vacation in VR, we go to school in VR. It's all about VR. And I think you can all recall movies in the past where we learned about robots or artificial intelligence. I think that this movie will make VR available, make VR understandable for the mass majority, similar to what maybe we had the Matrix when I got excited in the early days. But I think it's also important that this great technology is not just for entertainment and for commercial use. I think this technology really has the power to change the world. And one of the things we're doing is that we're partnering with the United Nations. The United Nations has something called the 17 Sustainability Goals. So it's around poverty, climate change, peace. And what we have done is we're trying to connect the causes who want to save the world with developers who can create experience in this world. Because people working with poverty, they have no idea about this technology. But the developer and creative community really want to help out. So we're giving grants, and here's some of the first 3 grants holders, the Tree, Honeybee, and Space VR. But I want to show you one example that's launching very, very soon, which is Space VR. So Space VR, what they're doing is that they are sending out a VR camera into space. So they booked a SpaceX rocket, and they're sending it up, I think it's in January next year, so that anyone can basically get the perspective of an astronaut. And the reason why this is so important is that the 500+ people who've been into space, when they come back, they have a different perspective on our planet. They don't see any borders. They don't see our crazy politicians. They don't see our angry neighbors. They don't see religions or color. They basically see that we're one planet. And actually, as you can see, the planet is protected by a very, very thin layer. So we should need to take care of it, because otherwise it will be game over very, very soon. And they call it the overview effect. So their perspective on life is very different when they come back. So the idea here is that Space VR wants to give all of you, your kids, your grandparents, a chance to watch our beautiful planet from space. So hopefully, VR will save the world, and hopefully, we will save the world together. Thank you very much for listening. So, with that,
Join me.
I'll join you.
Thank you very much. Well, I was just going to say, actually, just quickly going back, in an IBC first, at the end of this talk, Rikard has agreed to take his top off and fly
Yes,
out
I'm
of the
going
roof
to rip
of
my
the
shirt
building.
and fly out of here.
Yeah, so real reality.
As long as we get on the front cover of the IBC Daily.
Yes, indeed,
Yes.
indeed. So on the themes of taking off, I think before we get into the discussion, it would be really good, I think, just to sort of have a look at where the market is today.
Yep.
And where it may be going in the future. So here up on screen is some data. There's a lot of forecasts out there. As we know, forecasts are just that. They're forecasts, and nobody actually knows where it's going to end up. This is from Superdata, a research agency in the States, who in my experience are one of the most informed and thoughtful in this space. It's showing pretty high trajectories. It's going to become a big marketplace, supposedly. What's your sense looking at it?
Yeah, I think both VR and AR is going to be massive, and I think there's going to be these different segments, because if you have a phone that most of you have, you're going to have some 360 video, some light sort of AR. So everyone is going to get a feel for what it is very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think then, in order to have the transformative experience, you need to get a headset or a pair of glasses. Eventually, there will be projection technologies giving you the more realism experience. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things which is interesting, as we're seeing this year, you will have these standalone devices where you don't necessarily need powered by PC or phone, which I think has the potential to dramatically increase these numbers. In addition, because I think most analysts are thinking sort of mobile phone or PC-powered VR. I don't think they have cardboards or anything in this.
No, the cardboard's not. So cardboard, which is the Google device, the very low-price device,
it's like given away for free.
Yeah, exactly. Not included in these numbers.
And maybe not really a VR experience.
Yeah, and just one other slide, which just shows where headsets are being sold, at least the forecast. So more than 2/3 of it is North America and Europe. Yep. In terms of who's doing what, we don't have a slide for this, but there's some data from IDC, which was released in June, which looked at who was doing what. Now, there's a number of main players in this space. You may or may not be aware, but aside from HTC, the big players there's Sony, there's Samsung, there's Google, with their Daydream platform, and there's Facebook's Oculus. So those are the main kind of competitors in the space.
Maybe Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft coming soon, yep. Yes, exactly. But the IBC data in June was basically looking at market share from that previous quarter, suggesting that Samsung are leading the way with 21% share off the back of their Gear platform, which is mobile phone-based. And then Sony's PlayStation VR, capitalizing on the big install base of PlayStation, and then Vive are in there, followed by Oculus and Daydream. So that's roughly how market share is shaking out.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that if you are on a mobile phone and looking at a 360 video, it is not really VR. And if you have a game console like PlayStation, you're probably sitting in front of your TV, putting on the headset, and with maybe even a gamepad. So it's not really that you're playing the game and you have sort of 360 view, but you're not interacting with the world as you would have on a Vive or an Oculus or a high-end device. So it is a big difference. And of course, as you pointed out earlier, I think when we talked, the price points are very different as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I was thinking, so in terms of getting to these numbers, so if you go back to those forecasts, to get to that point, I mean, if it gets there, that's a really interesting industry, but it's a way to go to get there. Our sense, and we were talking earlier, and certainly my sense is to get there are kind of three broad areas that need to be addressed, which is lower prices for the kit. This stuff is expensive right now. Better and less bulky kit, and then also content. So starting with price, right? If somebody in this room wants to get a Vive, it's roughly $500, something like that, depending on the price of any day, plus a fast computer. So it's not a cheap thing. Oculus have got similar prices. They've been cutting prices recently. It sort of stimulated their market share. What's your sense of when it becomes a product that families don't have to think a huge amount about? They can go out, it becomes more affordable. What's the trajectory for that?
So today, most people have a PC or Mac at home. And the best way to either you have a new one and then it will work, so you can easily upgrade. So it's a few $100. And then what we're seeing now is actually for PC, they're basically upgrading their graphics card, so they don't need to buy a completely new device. However, I think what's happened in the last year is that not only has the price point come down a lot, but actually the value proposition, the types of content is much more now, because we have over 2,000 titles on the platform. You have really AAA titles today and also coming out a lot. So the things that you can do with it, the perceived value combined with the price being more accessible, and everyone who buys a new computer, you'll probably have it bundled very soon.
Yeah.
So therefore, what's going to happen in the next couple of years, that price is going to come down, the value will go up, and then also that will drive adoption quite a lot, I think. So
it's looking like a couple of years before prices, speed of computers, the sort of adoption, the replacement cycle, before it starts to really kind of kick in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, most of us probably saw some announcement from a big company very recently where they launched new mobile phones, and they cost $1,000, and probably people are lining up to buy them. So it's all about the value. So if you pay $1,000 for a phone, it's because you think it's very, very valuable. And I think that value proposition is definitely there for VR and AR as well.
Sure. Okay. So on the idea of better and less bulky kit, this is a common refrain. I mean, interesting. 3D was a big thing a number of years ago. People said, "Oh, it's the glasses, the hassle." But if you look at, if you take the Vive, right? Vive is widely regarded as the best platform out there, the best headset. If you look at what developers are working for, they're all pushing towards Vive. But it is a bit like putting a scuba mask on your face at times, right? When do you think this kit is going to become smaller, more comfortable? When does it become nothing more than a pair of glasses? What's your sense on that?
Yeah, I think the important thing with VR is that it's not about the future. It's actually already here. So if you want to have immersive entertainment, or education, or professional uses, or train as a doctor, the technology is already here, so the opportunity is here. I do think that very soon you will have a much better design and lighter sort of, but in order for you to be completely immersed, you actually need to be completely immersed. So they might be a slick pair of Oakleys very, very soon, or for augmented reality, something that's either a pair of glasses projecting something on your retina. So that is coming in the next 5 years, I would say. But I also think that there needs to be a little bit more socially acceptable, and I think it needs to be something that you kind of get used to, and that takes time for consumers. What's going to happen is that it's going to be a much more social experience. The headsets that you see now that are VR, of course, they will have see-through so that you can switch between fully immersed experience to these sort of augmented reality experiences, so that you won't have two different devices. It will be one device to give you that experience. So I think that you just have to be a little bit patient, because there are technology advances needed. It's content experiences, but also consumers need to get around to the idea. I think that the standalone headsets that are coming is that's something that you have on your coffee table in the living room, or instead of watching Netflix or whatever you're watching on your tablet in your sofa, you'll slip this on, regardless if you're in the sofa or you're on the airplane back from IBC.
Yeah. Tell me, when you're with your kind of research departments, where you're looking at how consumers are reacting to the headsets, there is a theory, and it's a sense of sort of sometimes that by putting a headset on, it can be isolating, and you see how kind of multitasking we are with our devices. I mean, I know that when I watch TV in the evenings, I'm on my phone, I'm these things. But to put that headset on, you can't check your phone, you can't see anybody else. That's both a good thing and a bad thing. What are you finding in that sort of?
I think the power with VR is that you're actually transporting yourself from the real world into the imaginary world. But in the imaginary world, you can still check your phone or your social feed or something.
Right, yeah.
It's just that you don't have to take it off. So you'll have that projected in the real world. Or if someone calls you today, you can receive a phone call in VR, or as we showed from Facebook, sort of a Skype kind of video call as well. Yeah. So I do think that even though you're in the real world and something important happens, you'll be able to be reachable. Today on the Vive, you can press a button and you can basically see through the headset. So when someone is bringing you a glass of wine, you can actually take the glass without taking the headset.
That is an important innovation.
That's a very important innovation.
Yeah, good. And to get, I guess, so to move on to the content piece, it's all very well having lighter, better kit with better resolution. All that stuff is needed, but unless there is something to do or to watch, it's kind of what's the point? And so talk to us a bit about what the strategy is within Vive and HTC about trying to stimulate the market for content creators and ensure that once you've bought that kit, there is no sense of disappointment that actually there isn't enough stuff to engage with.
Yeah, I think we're focusing on 5 key areas. So of course, gaming and entertainment experience is the key one and doesn't need any explanation. I think that what we found is that learning is our #1 priority, because we do see that everything from kids to professionals like doctors or even like safety training, by not having a second screen but actually being focused and having a Google Earth kind of awesome experience, your learning ability, your ability to take in information that is not just visual or auditory, but also physical, makes that your recall is so much higher. So I think that's a very important one. I think if you're in arts or design, there will not be an architect on the planet that will present to you 2D drawings of your house anymore. You will be able to put it on and watch your house in VR right away, which means that all the people who are designing everything from cars to houses, they will all move from a 2D screen where they've been doing 3D work to basically move into that world, and they will collaborate in 3D. I do think that the social space is so important because, and it's not just social, Facebook social, but think about the time where you have meetings on Skype or social platform. So interacting in the social world is going to be key. And then, of course, we see that Hollywood is embracing it with entertainment and TV. And finally, brands and retail and shopping. So it's everything from shopping your next vacation to building your car in VR rather than on a web page to looking at your next travel destination or the IKEA catalog. So the brands are moving their products to everything from sell things to give customer experiences in VR. Okay.
Let's talk a bit more about, you talked about Hollywood. There's a lot of broadcast, this is a broadcasting audience. You talked about the work you're doing with Netflix to bring Stranger Things into VR. There's the Ready Player One film, which, the book, if anybody's here who has not read the book and is interested in VR, you should, because it's a really, really fun and engaging view of what this world might be. So from your perspective, it's about taking existing brands where possible into VR and doing add-ons and building on those franchises.
Yeah, I think, typically the cost of the IP is and the production of that IP experience is the really one. So if you own sports rights, for example, you have sports experiences. If you can enhance that through augmented reality or VR experiences, when you produce it, there's so much more you can do, which means that the value that you can extract from that experience is going to be much, much higher. So I think that's the way I would think about it. But also, when you're producing a sports show today, as we all know, that fancy sports studios that show stats on the walls, that's not really a real studio. It's all made in computer graphics. So I think in production, this is also going to be a game changer in many ways. So I think the idea here is to look at how can I change the things I'm already doing by leveraging these technologies to make something which is significantly better or more cost efficient, but also higher value for our customers and consumers.
Yeah. Okay. And when you go and talk to either the Hollywood studios or the big brand owners from TV or the broadcasters, how are you persuading them to focus on VR and these sort of extensions, given that there's never perhaps been a more confusing, challenging time for the entertainment industry with so many different technological changes? There's a sort of a huge move towards OTT. There's a sort of an arms race around scripted content. How are you kind of grabbing their attention, and what's the business model for them?
Yeah, I think where we are now is that if you have any movie coming out, so recently we had Spider-Man, there's this VR experience. You have another superhero movie coming out now, and Blade Runner is coming out, and the Star Wars movies coming. They all have a VR experience, and I think the way they're thinking about it is more of a marketing attachment. It's something innovative. You can have the experience in the cinema hall at IMAX, but eventually it will move more into something which is like the gaming. You'll have a computer game on that property, and then I think the challenge, of course, now for them to make the investment is that everyone has a mobile phone, so you can make a simple 360 video or something. But then the question for you is that how the high-end experience, should I make it for the Vive or should I make it for which platform, and what's the return on investment on that? So I think that it's we need these brands to drive adoption, because then consumers see value. So it's kind of this early stage where you get the positive spiral. Great content will get more users will get more great content. So that's kind of the ecosystem that we're kind of reaching out our hand to this industry to partner with on to make this a reality.
Okay. So there's probably a number of people in this audience are working for big broadcasters or big tech firms, and they're probably, part of the thing they're thinking is, should we be in this space? What should I be doing? And so when they go back to their office and report to their colleagues or their bosses about what should be happening in VR and AR, from your perspective, what are the arguments they should be making?
I think it's very easy. I think there's only one thing you should do. It's only one thing you should do, and that is you should try the high-end VR system. Because what's happened then is that I've seen thousands of people try this thing, and it doesn't matter if you're a teacher, a doctor, an engineer, or a movie producer, or a production specialist. What happens is that you will understand, based on your experience, plus the VR experience, you'll see that how you can produce things differently, how you can create stories differently, or how you can educate your kids differently. So I think you just have to try it, and then you'll see it. And I think once you've done that, it's because it's kind of an experiential media. So you need to try it. You can't intellectualize it. It's like the Matrix when Neo sits in front of Morpheus with the red and the blue pill. You have to take the red pill and run down the rabbit hole and experience it.
Okay. And when people are at home trying, playing on the Vive, doing their thing, what's the most popular stuff? What are people loving the most?
So the thing that people love the most is that they like to play games and they love to create experiences. So my girls, you know, if they can be underwater or play a tilt brush, you have to drag them out. And I think probably 90% of the early adopters are interested in gaming and gaming experience. So if you're playing games, this is a 10x better experience because you're much more immersed than you can be on your little PC screen. So that's today. But we're starting to see businesses like all the car manufacturers, if it's Tesla, BMW, they're all showcasing cars because they can only fit like 2-3 models in the showroom, and now you can have all 20. So I think that and IKEA. So we'll interact with virtual reality, not just for entertainment, but also when we're making consumer purchases going forward.
Sure. Okay. In terms of the commercial side for HTC on this, is it a long game you're playing? I mean, are you making a return on it right now, or is it about investing for the future and positioning yourself for when the wave really arrives?
So our perspective is definitely for the long term. And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to build an ecosystem. And I think HTC has a long background from the mobile phone industry. When I was at Google 9 years ago, I launched the first Android phone, which was an HTC phone. So HTC launched the first Android phone, the first Windows phone, the first 3G phone, the first 4G phone. So it's been an innovator. And I think the one thing we learned is that you need to create an ecosystem where you don't have the great hardware, but you need to have great content and services. And you need to be in an ecosystem of technology like this haptic feedback, wireless. So we're basically building a platform for technology, content, and user experiences. And I think that's going to take, it's going to take a couple of years. And we're committing to making that happen.
I mean, it's a huge space with huge opportunities and so many different routes you can go down. It also feels expensive, right? And I just wonder, is this a market that is going to be sort of almost sewn up by the social media giants? Is it just Google and Facebook are going to win because of their scale and their volume? How do you guys how can you compete with those kind of Goliaths of the world of tech?
Yeah, I think you have to split it up. You have technology, and then you have operating system platforms, and then you have services. So if you think about the ecosystem where you might have giants like, I don't know, Netflix there, they have a content service that goes across many platforms. You have maybe Android, iOS, etc. You have many technology providers providing on that platform. I think that for my business, Viveport, we want to be a platform and device agnostic experience store. So it doesn't matter if you have a high-end Vive device, or you have a standalone, or you have a mobile VR device. We want you as a consumer to go to us and find your VR experiences. But also, if you're a developer or creator, you probably want to publish your content on multiple platforms. So what we want to do is we want to help you build your business across platforms. So if you think about the standalone, we announced it with Google, for example, which means that the hardware will work with the Daydream platform, whereas the current one is on sort of a PC Steam platform. So I do think that it will be a little bit more platform agnostic. So it is a little bit complicated ecosystem where people are both competitors, but they're also partners to make this happen.
And talking of those partnerships, you're working very closely with Google. You're going to be providing them, according to the reports, the next Daydream platform. There are also reports suggesting that HTC is thinking more broadly about the future. There's been speculation Google might buy you. Do you want to tell us anything about that?
Announce it here. I'll come out, fly out. No, but I think you're right. I mean, we, you know, both Google and Facebook and also Apple and Intel are all partners of us and have been for 20 years since the company started, and will continue to be that. I cannot comment on any rumors in the industry, so I guess when we actually have news, we'll present the news.
Okay, good. We'll come for questions in a minute. I'm hoping there might be some questions from the audience. But also in terms of, you know, this is. You know, the Vive is a great piece of kit. You know, it's got some fantastic experiences on there. Likewise, there's some really good stuff going on in the industry, but it's early days. What do we need to learn from 3D to make sure that it doesn't the promise slip away, if it were?
Yeah, I wouldn't even compare it to 3D actually, because I think it's become something completely different.
Okay.
But I do think that it is very important to get great content and experiences. I think that's the really important thing, and I think that maybe that's the learning. So, you know, since we launched in just over a year ago, we have 2,000 titles published. We have, you know, over 20,000 developers there. I think that most movie studios are producing a VR experience for the Vive on it. If you are, you know, if you're Tesla or you're BMW or if you're IKEA, they're all developing VR experiences. The players who are going to make this happen is us and Apple and Google and Facebook. These are significant players in the industry, committed long-term to make this happen. So I think that you can feel reassured that this is not going to be something like 3D.
It's not a fad.
It's not a fad. It is kind of happening. So there are two alternatives. You could wait and see, and there will be other players who will get ahead of you. Because I think that the formats and the experiences will not necessarily be what you think they will be. I think, you know, in the beginning, when the web came, you took the newspapers and you put them online, and then you took the online things that went to mobile, and it didn't really work because it's a different media. So you need to invest now to understand how you can use this to, you know, produce your content, distribute your content, and also create great storytelling. Because if you don't, you may not be part of this future.
Okay. Great. I wonder if we can, don't know if we've got any questions. Would anybody like to ask anything particular? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
The chat there. I think there's a microphone just coming just behind you, actually, so it'll be passed across, I think.
Thank you for the presentation. A couple of questions. One is technical. So are you planning to move into AR? So this is the direction of
So I'll repeat the question. So the question: are we planning to move into AR? So definitely, we think of it as a continuum to some extent, where you have fully immersed to having something which is not so immersed, but you still have this ingest of digital objects. And I do think that, from an app store perspective, I think these devices, or even your phone, will have the capability of providing both immersive and sort of augmented experiences. And if you do production, say that you're doing volumetric capture, you're creating this little avatar or something, you will be able to place that in the virtual world, but you will also be able to place it on your kitchen table. So if you want to have David Attenborough talking to you as a little sort of avatar on your kitchen table, you can do that, or you can, you know, go with him under the water and he'll show you as well. So I do think there will be a lot of synergies once people sort of figure out what you can do. I think the key thing is with the devices that we have now, mobile phone will be the main thing for AR. I don't think that are really augmenting your reality experiences. It's a nice little gimmick today. But I do think that the headsets and the glasses that are coming will provide you something which is much more lifelike or interactive, and you actually believe that the dinosaur is there.
Just on that AR point, and so we'll definitely give you your second question, but just the recent Apple announcement, the usual sort of hullabaloo about everything they're doing, but there wasn't so much on AR that people had thought there might be. But what's your sense? What are they going to do? Are they just going to clean up?
Yeah. So some people may actually think that AR is happening before VR and that it's easier. Actually, I would argue it's not coming before, it's coming after, and it's harder. And the reason it's harder is that you need to, with the camera, probably dual camera, you need to map the 3D space where you are at. And then you need to put a digital object there that you can walk around or go closer, and it scales with that in real time, and making that a believable experience. So for anyone who tried even some of the most high-end one, it is a very cartoonish and a very sort of beta developer experience. It's not as fluid as some of the things I showed you here, which means, and if you look at the promotional videos for some of these companies, yeah, the vision about the future is nice, and the whales are jumping out of the floor. That's not where we are today. So it's much more sort of sketchy. We will get there, I am sure. So I think it's going to start with VR and sort of mobile phone AR, and then eventually we'll move to something which is realistic AR as well.
Okay. Just to continue on that, what do you think the 2-3 next technical challenges? So if you would, where the technology should moving into?
Yeah, I think that the technology is happening, but I think the main challenge is to get great content experiences that creates the value for consumers or for businesses. And once we have that, then of course, the technology is going to come. I think it's just for everyone to be a little bit patient, because the mobile phone, when it started early on, and we were carrying these big Ericsson phones, and we were happy to if we actually could make a phone call, but we were very proud. So we're kind of in the early days of the VR cycle, and of course we have our slick new phones that cost $1,000, and we're also equally happy. But that was it's been like 30 years, so it's going to take a little bit of time for us to have that kind of ultimate experience. I think today it's also very, people are excited about it, but I think like the internet, we kind of expect that we have the internet, that we have connectivity everywhere, and I think with augmented and VR, we will not talk about it. It will just be natural. If you didn't have a VR AR experience, people will wonder, are you crazy? Are you like a newspaper? So it's just going to take some time.
Great. Do we have any more questions from anybody? Oh,
fine gentleman over here.
Just here, and one at the back as well. Could we get the microphone just down here, please? Oh. Thanks very much.
I'll repeat the question if it doesn't work.
No, you're working. You're good.
Okay, now it works. My question is about, let's say, it's all very impressive, fantastically impressive, but there's also a downside with VR, as I have learned, that it can have, let's say, on the health side of things, you can have various issues with motion sickness, and that's only to start with. I think there are a whole range of currently not fully explored possible issues, and people react quite differently to this. So my question is really, is there anything from the technical side that could, let's say, reduce these effects?
Yeah. So the question was, are there health concerns, or we heard about motion sickness in VR, and is there anything from a technical point of view we can do? So let me first say that with the motion sickness, what happens is that when you're sitting on a game console, for example, where say that you're having a ride, you're at the theme park and you're going up and down, for example. What happens is that your visual system see that you're actually going up and down, but your balance system, your ears, are basically not detecting that you're moving. Your body's not feeling any G-forces. So there's a mismatch, and that will cause discomfort because it is not in tuned. So therefore, if you actually riding a car, or you're running, for example, or fighting or shooting, but if you're standing up and you're actually there with a lightsaber, what happens is that all your senses are in tune. So that's why the high-end VR system is actually making it much, much, much better. Regarding the health concern, we have done several studies for the eyes, comparing, if you continuously watch that, I can see a lot of you people are looking at your mobile phones, probably taking notes and tweeting. Because then you look down probably a couple of 100 times every day, compared to actually looking at these screens. So we found that it's less strainful actually, because you're like looking at something all the time, so your eyes get used and relaxed, whereas actually you have to shift all the time. And one of my favorite, I didn't talk about it here, but one of my favorite applications of VR is actually how it can help treat cognitive diseases. So cognitive diseases like depression, phobia, things that are going on in our brain, which we today probably have to take medication, so some happy pills or something like that. So there's several clinical studies showing how you can basically have therapy without taking drugs to fix some of the problems that we have in our brain. It's still early on, but I do think that's very, very interesting. We have done 60 startups with our Vive X, and several of them are actually looking into VR health. One of my favorite ones, what they can do is that they can show that they are reducing, people who have chronic pain, they can reduce the pain level without giving medication. So their tagline is software is the new pharma. But so there's something to be discovered, not just in businesses and marketing, sales, design, and sort of collaboration, but I think health is going to be very, very important.
Great. I don't know if we've got time for one more or not, or whether we're out of time.
I'll be around if you want to grab me. Yes.
Well,
yes.
We'll do one more, the chap at the back.
Yes, please.
Rikard, just short question. Can you give some indication of where you feel VR and AR will affect physical shopping and online shopping?
Yes, so the question is physical shopping, online shopping. So I think this is probably a great use case. So I am currently in the mood to buy a new car, been renting too long, and I've been to a couple of websites where you build your own car to sort of see what it costs. But actually the dealers now, BMW and Tesla, you can basically build your own car. So of course you can go to the dealer to do it, but you can also do it at home. Same thing when you're buying an apartment, you're looking at a new house. Same thing when you look at the IKEA furniture. Same thing with a lot of things, even buying shoes now. So I do think that having both VR and AR to enhance your shopping experiences is going to be super important and helping us making better purchase decisions.
Great. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there because we're out of time, but I just wanted to say an enormous thank you to you, Rikard.
Yeah,
for a
and
really
thank you guys for coming in on Saturday.
Thank
Appreciate
you very
it.
much. Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rikard. Well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could head out, please, so we can set up for the next event at 3:15. Thank you very much.